Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the value of a single session. Okay, so the reason why is I'm really, basically people don't value Dungeons and Dragons the way I do. I don't think anyone in the world values Dungeons and Dragons the way I do. It's incredibly, I think it is the most valuable secular thing on the planet. It's the best way for me to describe it. There's really just nothing that is not sacred that is more valuable, right? Yeah, I think, yeah, because my family, all of that is sacred. Like, it's all mixed into sacred things. If it's the only thing that does not cross into a sacred space that has incredible value to me. But it does. It has every single campaign session has an immense amount of value. And I've been going through this specific experience recently that has taught me a lot about value and how people value things. All right, so let's talk about it. So I'm gonna take you through this journey about value, and when we're done, I think you will see that people land into three brackets when it comes to valuing a single Dungeons and Dragons campaign session. All right, so let's get into it, let's look at this from the player's perspective. Okay. All right, so recently I have been going to farmers markets. So I have somebody who I care about very deeply. Somebody, absolutely a friend, who their job is they're a picker, right? And what they do is they buy from a whole host of different sources. Sometimes estate sales, sometimes just somebody who they advertise, right? They literally put those signs in the ground, to advertise for their business. On their vehicle, it has their number, and it says, this person, they buy comics, toys, and video games. So this person is a SME. They are subject matter expert, SME, this friend of mine. And our relation, yeah. So this, I think it's fair to say a friend, right? And this person is doing me a huge favor right now, so I definitely think this is a friendship, right? And with no return. Like, I'm not returning anything to this person for value, right? So basically, they're taking me through this journey, and this person is a picker. They're a professional picker. It's all they do, right? So they buy things and they resell it. Now, we've really been feeling the pinch. This Vladimir Putin inflation storm in America is just absolutely, it's horrible. It's just, and it's hurting me and my family. And we have had to take things that we took for granted and take them off the list of things we're able to afford. Right? Vladimir Putin has fundamentally, his attacks on the U.S. have been successful, and he has made it so that Vladimir Putin is successful in making sure that Scott Garibay's life is infinitely more dismal. Right? Just no other way to say it. Right? And for that reason, I would really like to put 700,000 boots on the ground, take Moscow, and keep it for America. I think that'd be a good solution, right? Like, and I really feel at this point Vladimir Putin has declared war on the world, and the world is simply not answering, right? And as a man, I would really like my nation to answer with 700,000 boots on the ground, take over Moscow in 1 week, and keep it forever. I think that would put us square for what's happened. All right. So that's my take, right? But because of that, I have literally been farmers marketing. And what am I farmers marketing? I'm not like my good friend, right, is a professional picker, but I'm not, right? But you know what I do have? I have 42 years of collections, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm taking my collections and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, what do I value here, right? Now, I was incredibly blessed. Me and my son played, I do singular things with each of my children. So my youngest son, we spent 5 years every Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. playing in a Pokemon collectible card game league, right? And over those years, we literally got 1,000 plus Pokemon rares and no less than 10,000 cards, which people call bulk, which I don't think is the right name at all, but I'll say commons and uncommons, right? So we have 1,000 plus commons, and we have easily 10,000, maybe 20,000 common and uncommons, right? And so one of the things I did over the last year is I went through our entire house, pulled these things all together, and put them in one space, right? And so one of the things I've been doing is I've been going to the farmer's market and I've been selling these, right? And it is very challenging, right? So pricing them is brutal, right? Because there's thousands of them, so I could spend hours and hours and hours pricing them. So I have a tactic, and I'm going to share this with you. If you ever have, by the way, if you're a dungeon master, you might find yourself with thousands of rares soon as well, right? Because they're directly usable within Dungeons and Dragons, right? So the best way to price cards is fill a binder with them, go to a farmer's market, pay the $20 for a table, right? And then in the binder, when people come up and they look through the binder, they're like, what are the prices? You can say, let me know what you want, and I'll give you a price on it, right? And then what you do is you wait for somebody who actually knows what they're doing, and you'll be able to tell them, right? Because they'll say things like, oh, full art hollow. That's somebody who knows what they're doing, right? Like, they'll give clues, right? And what they'll do is they'll go through and they'll pull a stack, right? And one, I don't want to waste that person's time. I think that's unfair, right? So I will guaranteed sell them one of those cards in the pile, right? And so what I'll do is I'll look up one of them in TCG Player, right? And I'll say, this card is $10 on TCG Player, but I'm going to give it to you for $4, 60% discount, right? And then would you like this card? And, well, what about the stack? And then you say, this entire stack, I won't look it up because time is of the essence to you and to your other person. I'll say the entire stack's $500, and they're like, that's too much. No problem. Do you want the $4 card? And they'll say yes, right? And what they did was they pulled out everything that's worth over $10 from the binder, right? And so this ain't my first rodeo. I've been down this road before, right? So that's how you get it done, right? And then you price the rest, right? And actually, you ain't even gonna price all. You only have time to price your rares, and you don't even have time to price all the rares, right? But if you actually know the game and what cards are powerful, and it can help you, like, oh, I only need to price this 10th or this 3rd, right? So I've been doing this for about 3 weeks, right? And I've had literally 100+ people look at this binder, right, filled with Pokemon cards. And there are 3 people that fall into 3 groups, right? There are children who come up and look through the binders and they go, oh, mommy, Pokemon. They all say the same thing. Mommy, Pokemon. And they're generally between 5 and 15, right? Now, yeah. If they're 15, they're like, hey, Mom, can I get a 20? Right? Like, they don't ask in exactly the same way, but it's kind of the same, right? So, but generally, when you're dealing with children, they're like, they'll say different things. And I'm very careful because I realize I'm selling to children here, now, first of all, I don't never sell to children, right? I wait for their parent to put up the money, right? And I'm very careful. I keep my mouth shut, right? I don't go, oh yeah, maybe you want this one, and maybe you're like, you got to respect parents, right? Because I am one, so I know this is charged, right? And so one of the things I'll do, I'll say, oh, hey, everything on this section of the binder is $2 per card. And that took me a few weeks to figure out what was worth $2 or less, right? And I don't sell any card, and I don't sell a rare for less than $2 anymore, right? And I was like, hey, $2 for any of these on these pages. And parents are like, thanks, and then $2, they don't care, right? And the kid goes through, and they're like, oh, and by the way, I don't, actually, at this point, on Pokemon, I really only deal with not only rares, but only foil rares and only full art. So the lowest I go is a foil rare, right? I don't even deal with regular rares anymore, right? So I do foil rares and I do full art, full art hollows, right? And basically, but the kids, they don't care, right? They don't know that it's full art hollow. They don't know that it's foil rare. All they see is Charizard, right? So you get a kid comes up and they're excited because they're seeing Charizard, and to them it's just a Pokemon card, and they don't care what it's worth, right? But if they're starting to go paging through the book, sometimes there's a problem, right? Because if I'm trying to help, if there's a kid in front of me and then there's a parent there, right? I'll actually say, hey, These are the pages that are $2, right? But then when the kid gets to the part of the binder, and the binder gets more expensive as it goes, right? They'll keep pulling, and like as soon as you get out of the $2, right? There's a Mega Charizard XY Flashpoint, right? And actually, I'm sorry, a Mega Charizard XY Flashfire, right? That's a $150 Mega Charizard full art holo. Yeah, you ain't getting that for $2. That's $150, right? And the reality is, the parent wants their kid to be excited and get a Pokemon card. The kid doesn't care about. They're not even. Most kids, the vast majority of them, don't play Pokemon ever. Like, they just get the card and they shove it in their pocket, right? And they flip through these horribly damaged cards when they get home, right? And their dog comes and slobbers on them, and it's like a thing, right? They just want the card. They want to celebrate Charizard, right? Then you get, the 15-year-old who plays, right? And they're like, oh, hey, I see that the mana cost on this is low, but I see that the damage is high, right? I'm interested in this card, and I'll have to say, oh, I'm sorry, that's $150, right? However, and sometimes I get lucky, and they go, Mom, and Mom pulls out $150 and gives it to me without any complaint. Like, that does happen, no question, right? Like, but sometimes they'll be like, oh, and I'm like, you know what? No problem. Listen, I got another Charizard, right? This is a game day promo, right? And the Mega Charizard that you just chose does 150 damage, but this is 120. You're gonna be able to knock some people down with this, right? Like, you're gonna be able to knock a few opponents down with this. Try that, right? Then finally, you get the player collector, right? 25 years old, maybe 3 years out of college. That's a Mega Charizard, full art, holo, XY Flashpoint. How much do you want for it? I want $150. Well, I can get it on TCG Player for $150. You sure can, right? It's here today. You can get it for $150 right now. Would you like it? We're like, yes, I'll take it. It's happened, right? Like, and the reality is, I don't need to cut a deal on that thing, right? Because they ain't gonna do nothing but go up, right? And it is interesting. It is really, it's very interesting how people value it. So, how do people value a D&D session? Well, here's the thing, right? Children don't understand that these cards are not just a cardboard representation of their Pokemon. It is actually a game component. It is a component to the trading card game that is Pokemon. They don't even understand that. They don't know what the card is. And I'm very convinced that the vast majority of people who play Dungeons & Dragons do not know what it is, right? I am convinced, in my humble opinion, it is a human improvement engine. It was built by Gary Gygax. He knew that some kind of self-help thing was never going to do well, but that he can engage people by, in my humble opinion, Gary Gygax very carefully disguised Dungeons & Dragons, a human improvement engine, as a game, and it worked. It holds that disguise to this day. I don't think it is. I truly don't. There are things that happen on Dungeons & Dragons that just do not happen on any game, ever, right? No win-lose. The thing could simulate anything in life, right? And more than anything, the reason why I no longer believe that Dungeons & Dragons was ever a game is, more than anything on the earth that is secular, it provides joy and answers at a rate that is shocking once you really start to get into Dungeons & Dragons, right? And so basically, then you also have people who are like, oh, I understand that this is a game, but there are other people who are saying, oh, I think this is a game, but just because it's a game doesn't mean it's not incredibly valuable. The World Series just finished, right? There were billions on the line, billions, right? These players get made. Bryce Harper was paid $300 million. There are billions on the line, right, with these World Series. And, so even though it was a game, there was incredible value on the table. And there are Dungeons & Dragons players who are like, oh, I know this is just a 2-hour Dungeons & Dragons session, but I know there's a lot on the line here, right? And there's a lot that can be gained from this, and the value of this is incredibly high, right? And then there's me. I am the one who says, that is a Mega Charizard. full art hollow XY flashpoint, and that is worth $150. If you know, you know, and I know that when you sit down in a Dungeons Dragons game, that when you sit down in a Dungeons Dragons campaign session, you can walk away a changed person, and for that reason, it means the value is immensely high. Oh, that's my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.